Hello and welcome to the WDW News Today podcast, episode 4. We made it. The 3 ones that we did all in a row and recorded to play while you were in Paris have all played. Tom, I'm happy to tell you you've returned. It's been a success. Over 93,000 views, the first 3. For perspective, the University of Florida, the Swamp, the football stadium, seats about 93,000 people.
All right.
So, obviously, you're not going to cancel us this week, right?
No, but I would like people to go watch the EPCOT episode because a lot of people that watched 1 and 2 did not watch the EPCOT.
It wasn't juicy enough. Maybe it wasn't.
It can't all just be me complaining about other people. You know,
it can.
It's gotta be about theme parks at some point.
It helped me, and I think it's helped us kind of develop where you notice we have a slightly different setup today.
Yeah.
We
moved
my some things away.
Giant cabinet of Country Bear memorabilia across the room.
And it looked little takeaways, right? It's hard to look at yourself do this stuff sometimes, especially like I told you, I was like, man, I scratched my nose 1,000 times in episode 2, and I did. And someone's like, Eric looks like he's got like a problem.
I mean, of the places you could be scratching, it could be
my
worse.
problem was an itchy nose. My problem is not substance related. Yeah. Just for clarity here.
When we used to do audio podcasts, you could scratch whatever.
Those were the days.
Back then, you wear pants. So Friday night without pants.
I guess you don't have to wear pants right now if you don't want to.
It is fitting we record these on Fridays because for many years, 2007, I forget when we stopped doing them regularly. We Friday night was recording night, always.
Well, for a new show, I would say it's been successful so far. We appreciate the audience hanging out. And for the first time, we are live for our WIGS members at the $7 and up level. So if you're a WIGS member, $7 and up, you're getting this early. You're getting it live. Jake is showing you multiple studio feeds so you can kind of see what he sees. He might go and show you the Switch review soon, but I think right now they're probably looking at it in like a 3 or 4 square. I guess there's only 3 cameras. So
in order for you to see what Jake sees, you also need to adjust your chair.
You need to be 6'6".
Get as high as it goes.
Also, I'm in a different part of the museum. You haven't seen this on the show. So
the Epcot corner?
The Epcot corner. This is all kind of millennium-y.
Yeah, it's all that time period, right? Because that's the 96 Universe Energy. That's Test Track from 98. And then all millennium stuff behind you. You want to explain the star?
The star. So if you see the star behind me, looks like it's got a bunch of like dog tags hanging from it or something. They're actually plastic, even though they're shiny. This was, if you recall, when Epcot had the wand on top of Spaceship Earth. And this is one of the stars coming out of the end of that wand, basically, right? Is that a good way to describe it? I think this is one of the
Spaceship Earth ones.
Yeah, so Spaceship Earth, that's what I said.
No, but like, so there were different stars, right? There were stars on the wand.
Right.
And then there was like a trail of magic that went onto the geodesic sphere itself, one of the 20 greatest architectural feats in the history of mankind. They actually fastened some stars to the top of Spaceship
I guess we don't know for sure where this came from.
I forget. I think we do. We'll look it up.
No,
I think it's a Spaceship Earth one.
I looked at a photograph of the wand and the thing, and you can see something that says there's only one that's this exact shape.
Oh, really?
You can see it. I'm not sure that this is it. It could have been on. I don't know. You just get these things because they look familiar.
I think when Jason got it in the auction, it had a reference photo. I think we'll figure out exactly where.
If we find that photo, we'll have someone put it here in the.
No, I don't know how visible this
video
is. My Alien Encounter stuff is.
Oh yeah, Skippy.
We don't even have it lit. I'm sure it's lit from the studio lights, so that's probably fine.
Yeah,
it does have its own lighting in there, like Skippy, Timekeeper.
Well, what we decided to do today for today's episode is we're going to discuss Disney myths. We've all heard them. Some of them are true.
Yeah.
A lot of them are not true. We're going to dive in and discuss these as best we can. WIGS that are able to watch live will be able to, at some point, give us questions and things like that.
I'll keep a lookout for comments and things, So if you hear us, respond to people, you're listening to this in audio or watching the video later, then that's who we're talking to.
And we did solicit some input from WIGS on our Patreon page.
Yeah.
Some of those questions they had are reflected in the questions that we're going to look into.
Mm-hmm.
But before we go any further, Tom, who brings us this show?
Which one am I reading now?
Carousel of Products.
Oh, that's what I'm wearing. I'm wearing Carousel of Products right now. You can shop Carousel of Products at, guess where? Carouselofproducts.com. They have a big sale going on. It's been extended, I think, for another month. But I think we have some $5 T-shirts up right now. If those aren't your style, this is one of my favorite things we've done for the 25th of Animal Kingdom. I don't I wasn't wild about, get it, wild? I wasn't wild about the Disney merchandise. I think we did a better button-down shirt, which has all these, it's about 25 years of exploration, so it's all these exploration companies, right? There's one of my favorite is Camp Adirondack, which is a reference to Camp Minnie Mickey. There's some other fun ones on here. Kali River Rapids.
Camp Lejeune, obviously. If you drank the water at Camp Lejeune, the lawyers want to talk to you.
I'm wearing the matching tee. I don't know if the T-shirt sold out or not yet, but I'm wearing my whole Carousel of Products outfit. We got some good stuff. The Figment 40th anniversary stuff is still there. Some good stuff hanging out. And then a bunch of stuff's on sale too. So if you want to just grab a $5 T-shirt, a $4 pin, whatever the case may be. CarouselProducts.com. And we are working on. We have some cool holiday stuff coming. I can't talk about yet. I
can't wait.
And then obviously we're gonna. I'll tease this for the first time now. We do a lot of theme park anniversary events. It's always been a thing we've done, and obviously next year's 35 years of Disney's Hollywood Studios. So we're bringing back Stage 89.
There you go.
That event will be May 1st through the 5th. We have a very special product, something we've never done before that I'm really excited about.
We also have some incredible guests, but we don't want to give that away just yet.
No, not yet. I've got like 6 former Imagineers lined up already. So, but as soon as we can announce them and put tickets on sale, we will.
Well, that's great. I'm excited to be doing this live for the WIGS. I'm excited about all the upcoming stuff on Carousel of Products. Also, if you've never been to our studio, it is open to the public most Thursday nights. You can go to WDWNewsTonight.com and find out our schedule. Buy a ticket. They're pretty affordable. And then some of that merchandise we stock here. The rest of it is stocked at a fulfillment center somewhere in Ohio, I think. Or either way.
Which allows it to be delivered super fast, right? I have to comment. People tell me all the time, they're like, I ordered a shirt from you guys. It was here in 2 days. That happens a lot with Carousel Products.
That's a good sign that I wasn't in charge of shipping that.
Yeah, that's the reason we use the fulfillment company, yeah.
Right. You want to jump right into this?
Sure.
All right. Disney myths.
Oh, you're not doing news? No news?
No news.
All right.
People don't want the news. They said they want to watch Tom do news on his own show.
Oh, then I'll get
we
back
already
to
know
comment.
we already know the news.
I was going to stop giving my opinions of stuff on news today. Then
you know what? Pick something. Pick a story.
I don't want to pick anything.
No.
Go to the myths. It's
okay, we'll go to the myth. Look at him. He's so frustrated. It's Friday. Be happy.
It's not my Friday.
But we should be getting in that mood for other, even though it's Tuesday when this airs.
I refuse to be happy for others. It is against my nature.
That is not untrue. All right. A lot of people wanted to discuss this myth. The first one I have is that the reason Horizons closed was that it was on a sinkhole.
Yeah.
And there were too many structural risks to keep it open. As far as I know, this is sort of, there's been some indication that may have been a consideration, but I think primarily it's not true, right? There are sinkholes in the area.
Yeah.
But according to everything that I have seen, Marty Sklar once referenced, like, hey, there are some sinkholes in the vicinity. People have said that the sinkholes are actually closer to the Odyssey.
Yeah.
And that the reason Horizons closed is basically they didn't have GE anymore. Correct. And the building needed some fixing up. The attraction needed some fixing up. And Disney didn't want to pay for it themselves. Yeah. And to me, that's like the Occam's razor of Disney, right? Yeah. The simplest answer is usually the correct one, which is cost.
Well, to be fair, right? To be fair, at that time, the whole idea of Future World was their pavilion sponsored by corporate sponsors, right?
Right.
So the idea of having a pavilion not sponsored, I don't think worked for them, and it didn't make sense for the park, right? And they still weren't at a point where they felt like they couldn't sell a pavilion, right? So here's what happened, right? GE was already a Disney corporate sponsor, and then they were like, when they approached them at EPCOT, they're like, yeah, we'll come in, and why don't we? Well, our other attraction is Carousel of Progress, right? We want to do a sequel to that, and it'll be a sequel where you follow this family into the future, right? And that's Horizons. And then after 10 years, the contract expired after 10 years, and GE was like, we're out, we're done. And so Disney was like, oh, okay, I guess we'll just make it seasonal until we figure out who's going to sponsor this and what we're going to do. So the thing that really dispels the sinkhole rumor for me is that there are several very public plans out there to reuse that building for the Space Pavilion.
Right.
Which was what, Journeys in Space? I think it was Delta sponsored at one point. It was some I think Lockheed Martin was involved at one point. A lot of different people. Like there's that famous concept art of the people in that single seat like moonwalk jetpack
yes,
ride
yes.
thing. That's in that building, and you can find layouts of that building where there's like Mission Space was in that, but it was one small part of it, and there were other things. You'd go into the building and it break off, like Wonders of Life or the Land,
Right.
Central Atrium, and you break off another thing. So they plan on using the building, but then I think in the end, we have to ask Eddie Sato about this because Eddie worked on Mission Space. We've had him on the show a couple times, but when Mission Space got approved, then it was like, oh, we're going to do the centrifuge thing, and we'll knock down this building, we'll build a new building, and Compact's paying for it. And then Compact was purchased by HP, and HP begrudgingly had to take the sponsorship because they bought the company, and the rest is history. But there's a lot of sinkholes, and like Walt, I don't think Walt knew any better when he was like, EPCOT has to be in the middle.
Right.
Dead center. You can't, Walt, can we move it up? No, it's in the middle. It has to be the center. It's Epcot Center.
Right.
It's in the middle. And they're like, there's a lot of sinkholes in the middle, though.
Yeah.
And then they just had to build around which Odyssey definitely, if you ever wonder why Odyssey is such a weird, there's not a whole lot going on there. It's this little building. It's basically on stilts. There's these long bridges over water.
Right.
Because you couldn't build anything there. So that was like the Odyssey was the concession, essentially.
Also, I think the fact that they built another building in the same spot would dispel some of the sinkhole stuff because it's not like a sinkhole is one of those things you go, oh, just
you can't just fill it.
I mean, there is sinkhole remediation where that's what they do, but it's not something you would want to build another building on.
Yeah, and certainly not dig deep into the ground and put the middle of a centrifuge in, right? So if you go back and look at historical Mission Space construction for a Florida attraction, they went, I think, about as deep as you can go.
Right.
To put the center of those centrifuges in, yeah.
Also, you know how much stress a stellarvator puts on the foundation of a building?
Yeah, wouldn't the stellarvator would just pull the whole building over?
You have a sinkhole underneath a space elevator? The people at Space 220 would be furious.
Isn't it weird? You go outside, you can't see the stellarvator. It's never clear enough to see it during the day. I don't understand that. I keep looking up every time I leave the restaurant.
All right, here's one that's silly and allegedly, there are people that have believed this in the past. I find it hard to believe. The rumors are about the castle, about Cinderella Castle, right?
Yeah.
It's either that, like, the top comes off the castle if there's bad weather, or the castle sinks into the ground, or it can be disassembled and moved off-site. Like, that's demonstrably untrue.
Yeah.
That's probably not worth discussing, although it might be worth pointing out, look how hard it was for them to take the decorations off the castle after the 50th. Can you imagine on 2 days' notice with a hurricane coming, taking the turrets off? So that's obviously one of those rumors that's been around forever. Obviously
but that's like,
not true.
Your joke just illustrates a point of like people's perception of Disney in the past versus people's perception of Disney now, right? Like
that's what a lot of these rumors are based on.
They were
right?
such an amazing company. You have to really, again, go think pre-internet, right? They were such an amazing company. Like think about it. If you grew up in a world where the Walt Disney Company invented robots, like robots didn't really exist, and then suddenly they did because of Walt Disney. I might believe just about anything people said that the Disney company developed, right? Like they have monorails and they're building robots and like it seems they could do anything, right? So why would any of this why would any of these things be things they could not accomplish, right? So, at least in a world pre-internet, I can see why people believed a lot of these things. It makes a lot of sense.
Sure. Next up, we've discussed this before. Morocco didn't want the pavilion to light up.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, that is true.
That's a real thing. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. They don't want it. They don't want lights on their building.
So for illuminations, they rigged all the roof lines with lights, but Morocco was not allowed. And there's a section of Norway that's not lit either.
Is that the Stave Church?
The church, yeah.
That makes sense.
It's funny that the two last pavilions they added are the ones the ones closest to the opening of illumination are the two that didn't get the lights.
Well, that makes sense, and it's probably not. I don't have a whole lot of information about what I mean, I understand, like in Norway, right? That's a church.
Yeah.
So there might be some.
It had nothing to do with. A bunch of Norwegian companies got in bed together to sponsor that pavilion. Morocco was sponsored by the government, the Moroccan government, and that was Disney basically sat back and let them build the pavilion, right, with real artisans and real, so it was pretty much whatever they wanted, right? Disney was like, if you're going to do it, just go ahead. It's fine. Do what you want.
Here's one that I've actually heard people say with great conviction was true, which is that the turkey legs at Disney World were actually emu legs or ostrich legs. Have you heard that one before?
Every time honestly, like this time period behind you, the millennium, I think about like that's when the turkey legs got real popular. Yeah. And it brings me back to that moment of like everyone, like you'd see people eating them and they'd be like, you're eating emu? And even the cast member at the thing, you'd be like, is it really turkey? And some of them would just be like, no, it's emu. I'd be like, people selling you food would just tell you the food was something else. It was a different time.
It's worth pointing out that a lot of these myths were perpetrated by Disney cast members, even on things like tours that they've given, even things that they taught people in traditions that are just not true or that are fun stories playing with the truth. Some of these is forgivable on a tour. It depends. Are you on a tour to get educated or to be entertained? And some people want you to spin a yarn, right? And sometimes those yarn. Look, I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years. Every story you hear there is a little bit more sensational as it gets down the line of what happens, and that's a natural part of like human storytelling. Yeah. But a lot of these are just things that have been passed down, and they say it enough times and it becomes true. Well, they are not emu legs. Emu. Okay. Sure. I pronounce it based on the Bare Naked Ladies song, but they're Canadian, so.
Oh, mine is based on the Limu emu, the Liberty Mutual emu. Yeah, it's a commercial.
At any rate, they are not. Yeah. They are turkey legs. They are from tom turkeys. Tom turkeys are larger. Yeah. But the people have uncovered, who the supplier is and all that kind of stuff. They have never been ostrich legs. They have never been emu legs.
They've never been good.
I don't find them appetizing. I've had a bite of someone's before or something. I've never just walked around gnawing on one. But if you go there now to the area you call the baked potatoes.
Yeah, right? The Liberty Square market.
The Liberty Square area.
Baked potatoes.
There's like the remnants of a turkey leg, and laying near some bushes and a bunch of birds pecking at it.
Ibis is eating a fellow bird.
Yeah,
every time. A horror film. That should have been our Horror Nights house idea on News Tonight. Birds eating other birds.
So I'm sorry. You may be one of those people that has told people for years that this is a fact. It is not a fact. Yeah. There is no proof that this. In fact, there's plenty of proof to the contrary.
I've had one good Disney turkey leg.
Oh yeah,
Disneyland Paris. They're a much more normal size. They taste like real food. They're not as greasy. They're very good. Yeah. It was something they got for the 30th. It's in that I did a video review where I did 30 items, 30 of the new items for the 30th anniversary, which is now over. But they stayed. The turkey leg stayed.
You just buy it the same way? They just give you like a little...
It comes in a,
you walk around and gnaw on it?
Comes in a boat. So you could... Not like a toy boat, like a paper boat.
I thought you said a bowl. I was like,
no, a paper boat. It's considerably small. I guess you still pick it up. You can't use a fork and knife there. No one would blink at you there about it. Yeah, it's good though. I was surprised. I was not looking forward to it. And then I was like, that was actually pretty good. I would have that again.
I like the flavor of the turkey legs. I don't love the texture.
It's the grease for me. They're just wet. They're like sopping wet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this came from the WIGS chat. They asked, there was, what validity was there to the Night Kingdom / Dark Kingdom, the Fifth Gate? Yeah. And as far as I know, that was like in official channels kind of discussed that this was happening.
It was pretty far along.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a fifth gate. It was essentially like a
Pleasure
Discovery Cove boutique thing, right? It was like an expensive add-on you could do. Yeah. Yeah, and then for those that don't know, a lot of it was all what was zip. I think there was zip lining and animal stuff. And
where was it going to be?
I guess kind of near Animal Kingdom because it was going to involve animals in some way. Yeah, this wasn't the Villain Park thing. This was a different thing. Yeah.
Are these two different things, Dark Kingdom and Night Kingdom? Because Night Kingdom was the nighttime park. Was Dark Kingdom the Villain Park? Is that what?
Dark Kingdom, the Villain Park, I don't think has ever been real. They've definitely developed lands. We've seen art for Magic Kingdom. There was a, again, back to this time period, the millennium. There were real strong rumors after 20,000 Leagues closed about what they were going to do. And I remember vividly, I was here when the height balloons went up for both the Villain Mountain and Fire Mountain, which was the Atlantis one,
Yes.
which we have a fascinating Back to the Future video on this channel. If you've never heard about that project, I actually found all the real art. It was the first time anyone's seen the art for the thing. It was a roller coaster that switched from overhead track to under track, and was Atlantis themed and was in Adventureland. But then on the opposite side, they were the competing project, and at one point they were both going to happen. Was the 20K Lagoon would have Bald Mountain in the background. It would be a villain log flume ride, and there was an Ursula spinner and like a little village. That was very real, and that's why the question has been like, if Disney builds this villain land in Magic Kingdom, will it be the thing they thought they were going to build then? Will they just resurrect the whole concept again, which I think would be tremendous. I would love that. I know some people are like, oh, there's already a log flume at Magic Kingdom, right? Well, there's already also Pirates of the Caribbean. There's plenty of boat rides. I mean,
yeah. Interestingly enough, there was we did find news of a patent this week of a track switching ride that Disney has filed.
yeah.
So I don't know that same type of deal.
yeah, but that's Fire Mountain.
Fire Mountain.
Yeah, and then Bald Mountain or Villain Mountain was the boat ride one.
Sadly, this never happened. I also heard that that's where they were going to put the Adventurers Club. They were going to get rid of, like at one point when they were getting rid of the Adventurers Club, people were like,
that was Night
that's
King.
good. It's going to move to the Night Kingdom.
Night King, that was a Jim Hill thing.
Yeah.
But with Jim Hill, like I love Jim Hill, but you can never tell where the real ends and the fantasy begins sometimes in those stories. But
Okay. Another one. I've had people tell me this. The plane in the Casablanca scene of the Great Movie Ride was the actual plane for the film. In this case, I think the truth is actually more interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So the plane that's there is in Electra 12A. The real plane from Casablanca. Electra 12A was a real plane from that era.
Yeah.
But the plane from Casablanca wouldn't have fit. Right. This is a smaller plane. It is the plane that was used in the 1942 film, this blockbuster, Tarzan's New York Adventure.
Wow.
And like you said, you know where the plane is now. If you want to see it, you can.
What's cool about that is it was after the Tarzan scene.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. So for those that don't know, the front half of the plane went to the Great Movie Ride, and then they had the back half, and we're like, what are we going to do with this? And someone was like, oh, put it in the trees at the Jungle Cruise. And that's where it still is. So funny enough, a couple years ago when they did the refurb of Jungle Cruise, they decided to give the plane some backstory. The plane now has painted on the side of it the name Hathaway Brown. Hathaway Brown is a character from the Adventurers Club. Do you know what year the Adventurers Club opened?
It's got to be 90?
1989.
89, okay.
So the reason we did Stage 89 5 years ago, and it's just called Stage 89, was 89 was a big year for the company. And very specifically that first week in May in that time period. Because in that couple of week period, they opened Pleasure Island, the Disney MGM Studios, and Typhoon Lagoon. And so it's fitting that the back half of the Casablanca plane is now a reference to a thing that opened the same week, the Adventurers Club at Pleasure Island.
I feel like 89 was too easy an answer, so I guessed 90 so you could correct me.
Yeah.
So, because to make up for last episode when I corrected you on something, is that?
Shut up, Joe. Shut up. Joe's probably watching.
Joe's probably watching right now in the live chat. But yeah, Hathaway Brown, and a little bit of trivia. I have a letter from Hathaway Brown. Remember Lee got one, they would deliver that letter every now and then at the Adventurers Club of him. Yeah. So I have that.
I never got to go to Real Adventurers Club, but I've had several reunions that I've funded that I've been to.
They have many of them have been right here in this room, which was used as their dressing room.
They changed for the 50th.
When,
we did the Disney World
we did,
50th event, yeah. And then of course we had Pleasure Beach 5 years ago, which was when we reunited them on the beach at Yacht and Beach Club, and then did a New Year's Eve fireworks countdown in Crescent Lake.
So this next one is going to cause some disagreement.
Okay.
Essentially, and this is something that even people have been told on Disney tours, have been told by Disney, even by Imagineers or anonymous sources who said they were with WDI, that the brown pavement in Liberty Square is to simulate human excrement that was tossed out of chamber pots, thrown out the windows in Liberty Square to somehow simulate colonial times.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about this. obviously, this has been going on forever. Disney has told people this on tours.
Yeah.
But actually, there's Hal Bowers, who's with the Retro WDW podcast, excellent podcast. He tweeted about it a couple years ago, and it's an interesting story. He said, "For years I've read online that the meandering brown path running through Liberty Square is supposed to represent poop, thrown out of windows from chamber pots to settle in the street. Something seemed off, though, and I couldn't put it together until tonight. Here's some history. Herb Ryman did a lot of concept art for Liberty Square. He'd been messing around with the concept since the 50s for Disneyland. In their renderings, there's no poop. There's something to all of them that's very consistent, and that's cobblestone roads.
Yeah.
So when they put this in, essentially, they couldn't put like full cobblestone there, but they put little pathways of cobblestone.
Strollers and wheelchairs.
Right. So then they decided, well, cobblestone was rough for strollers, was rough for wheelchairs, and when they did a refurbishment, they're like, let's smooth it out. Also, parade floats were getting more intricate and more sensitive and needed that smooth surface.
Well, this was the thing that happened in all of the lands. They all had the flat colored pavement and then these little strips that essentially established the theme, right? So Adventureland had green pavement, and then there was this stonework that you'd find in patches, essentially, right? And so Liberty Square was similar in that, again, you'd find flat, regular painted pavement, and then sort of this cobblestone, and then Fantasyland had some too. And that's still a thing. If you go to Tokyo Disneyland, that park has had very little modification since 1983, which is not far removed from 71, and a lot of it's based on Magic Kingdom. If you go in Adventureland and Fantasyland, those lands, it's still like that. It is that painted pavement with these little sections of like thematic pavement, right, or cobblestone or whatever the case may be.
And I'd have to check the timeline, but if they are trying to optimize for parade efficiency and all that kind of stuff, there was a time in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s when they also changed the bridge to Liberty Square, right? Yeah. It used to be very high and sort of had a peak to it, and they flattened it, right? Probably for parade floats.
I thought Don Dorsey has told this story from when Electrical Parade debuted in Florida. I got to revisit that. I almost thought, I could be wrong. I got to go listen to it again. I thought he said 77 they had to make modifications for Electrical Parade at Disney World when that came.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean,
or maybe even Americon Parade.
You can see the old, a long time ago, the original bridge was very high because the swan boats went under it, right? The tours, they would, in fact, the swan boats would go around the Swiss Family Treehouse. Yep. And then they would go back under that bridge. And
more recently, I think the Adventureland Bridge is more recent when they knocked that one down and put the flat one in,
Anyway, Howe goes on to say, by the time of the American Revolution, cobblestone and other kinds of paved roads were very common in American cities. Oh. Some of them still exist, though a lot were replaced in the 1800s. Another thing that does not make sense is the idea that the refined colonists of Dr. Franklin's time would be filling the streets of Philadelphia with their excrement. Turns out that homes and taverns throughout Philadelphia did have private toilets. In fact, you can see Benjamin Franklin's privy pit. If you take a tour there, apparently, that's a thing. So this is not, you're not living in the Middle Ages, right? Like in the 1600s, probably a little bit more. I would be more inclined to believe in the Old West, not privy pots, not chamber pots, but like horses walking down dusty streets and it rains and they have a little bit of a, like a caved in area in the center, like a kind of a little ditch in the middle of the street where maybe horse poop and rainwater and mud and stuff run off. Anyway, the story goes on. It gets more interesting. While they might have thrown their pots in the streets by 1700s, this practice was dwindling. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think people in Philadelphia, which was a fairly cosmopolitan city of its time with beautiful architecture and all this stuff, and people dressed in their finery and their, fancy clothes, everything, are dumping poop out of the window. Yeah. It's probably something that's more likely to happen in Philadelphia today.
People try to tie it into the fact that they didn't build a public restroom in Liberty Square, but there are public restrooms on the outskirts of Liberty Square, basically everywhere. Yeah. And there's some argument as to if, did Frontierland really have one? Because
it would make more sense in Frontierland.
There's the one in the Breezeway, which I think technically belongs more to Adventureland than anything, but
yeah. Well, this actual aesthetic would make more sense. This story would make more sense in Frontierland, even though Frontierland is set years later than colonial Philadelphia.
Yeah.
These are Old West towns with dirt streets and not as much probably infrastructure as these established cities of like
maybe
Philadelphia.
Beyond Big Thunder, they throw the poop into the street.
I don't know.
We'll find out someday.
So yeah, they have pictures of when it was cobblestone.
Yeah.
And then it was replaced by brick. Around 92, there's pictures of it being brick.
Oh, yeah.
So then they're like, let's just do it with pavement, but let's make it a different color to set it off, right?
Yeah. Well, because the other lands were colored pavement. Adventureland was green.
Yeah, so let me scroll down why would Disney want to add a river of poop into the Magic Kingdom? It doesn't make sense from a business standpoint from who they are or whatever.
No, it was a way of leaving pavement for people to traverse easily, but still leave a little stretch that established the theme, right?
So then he says, oddly enough, he gets something from Chuck Snyder. He was Liberty Square's design developer, retired Imagineer. He got it from Chuck Snyder. It's from David Holmquist, who supported this. He said, oddly enough, I was the design developer for Liberty Square and can give you and Mr. Bowers the straight poop. The cobblestone insert in a walking pathway lip service to what was common in a day. It would have been much more expensive to completely cover the entire pathway in cobblestone. As you said, it would have been a nightmare for wheelchairs, strollers, etc. It was never considered to be thought of as part of a sewer system, not with Disney's good show, bad show design criteria. It's an interesting observation, however. And then he says, are you ready for the twist? The twist doesn't even sway me to this direction, but it may sway people. Hal Bowers was contacted by an anonymous present-day Imagineer who worked with the fellow who was heading up the paving master plan for Magic Kingdom in '95. And although it may or may not have been historically accurate, the brown trail that replaced the cobblestones in Liberty Square was intended to be a subtle nod to colonial sewage. It was perhaps never intended to become a talking point on tours like it became. It was likely meant to be an under-the-radar thing or harmless joke. The revision was made with that intent. I don't necessarily believe that the design team was like, ha, let's make this poop. I think they had to replace bricks that had replaced cobblestone, and they replaced it with a pavement that made sense. And then all of a sudden a story emerges, and who doesn't love a good story?
Since similar pavement exists in other castle parks, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that I will leave this one open to your interpretation. If you've heard it on a million tours and you want to believe it, believe it. I think, pardon the pun, it's a load of horse hockey. So I don't think it's true. I think it's made up because of it conveniently fits into the real story, right? That it happens to be brown pavement, and if you look at it a certain way and think about, and you happen to think that people in Philadelphia in colonial times were very primitive, I guess, then the story makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me for a number of reasons. Number one being like those people walked around with like high pants and like white socks pulled up all the way.
It would really go well with
They wouldn't go well together. All right. You can let us know what you think in the comments. I think it's baloney. And even though an Imagineer says, an anonymous Imagineer, by the way, says this, a lot of people worked on this project, and a lot of people are going to have different things to say about it. And who doesn't love a little story to tell their grandkids about something they did?
Mark, on one of our wigs, Mark said, I'm cranky. Steve then said, Tom is hangry.
Did you eat before you came here?
I've had Doritos and a Reese's peanut butter cup at this point. That's
like a real one, or the little like Halloween-sized ones we have in the kitchen?
BS ones we have in the kitchen.
I don't like those at all.
I think those are the worst iteration of the Reese's peanut butter cup I've had.
Because they're the same amount of effort they're actually more effort to unwrap them.
Yeah.
And then inevitably you peel the wrapper off and half of the chocolate coating comes off. And
yeah, they're bad.
Yeah, they're just not good.
Look, Reese's, at this point in time, we just need you to produce 3 products. We need eggs, we need trees, and we need pumpkins. That's it. You mastered it. You
and the peanut butter cups, the real ones.
No, I don't think so anymore.
Really? I like the big long big flat ones.
If I laid out the eggs, the trees, and the pumpkins next to a regular Reese's peanut butter cup, you could only take one.
I mean the regular for sure.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like the density and the size is perfect. It lends itself very well to freezing and like having a nice cold frozen
I like the
Reese's
ratio in the seasonal.
We're allowed to have different opinions on this.
You read the big cup? I don't know how I feel about
No,
the
I don't
big
like the big
cup.
cup. It's too big. Look, there's
big.
things I don't like. I don't like the various iterations of Reese's peanut butter cups that aren't the regular ones.
You ever had the white chocolate and put them in the freezer?
Yeah.
That's where it's at. Those are good.
And I really hate Tostito scoops. They are not a good replacement for real Tostito chips. Hey, those are two hills that I'll die on.
Why don't you like scoops?
The texture and ratio is off.
Oh, all right.
It's a little too thick, a little too hard. I don't know. I like the delicate chip. I can get a real good scoop of like Rotel on there. It's just the scoop is either too much, too little. It's hard to get it right. They're a little too small. I don't know. The scoops. I wish they could uninvent those. And of course, now that we're talking about it, Coca-Cola Freestyle machines. They should be illegal.
How dare you?
Oh, the worst.
I like my Cherry Pib Zero.
You know what? Do you like going to a restaurant that only has one Freestyle machine and there's 10 people waiting in line and someone's up there going, let me hit this button and then let me hit that button.
It's not Coke's fault that people are stupid, though.
No, but it's inconvenient. Just give us all the regular 5 choices and put 2 machines there, and I can reach in and do my Coke while someone else is doing their Diet Coke at the other end.
Jay Ware commented, I vaguely remember some show in the Odyssey as a kid. It was a restaurant with a show. Yes, it was.
Yes.
Character show. Clap your hands. There's a party going on. Clap your... I love that. I listen to that in my car too often. That it triggers a childhood, very happy
childhood. Tom gets pumped up.
For me. Oh, I love it.
On your way to record news today, you need to get pumped
up.
That
was my favorite character meal as a kid was Odyssey. Oh, it's so good. There are pictures of me. I'll send them to the editor. There are pictures of me taking photos with characters at the Odyssey at the character.
I'm the opposite. I never did any of those things. So I was I was the one who we would pack a cooler in the car and we would go back out to the car midway through the day and eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have the good ice bags from the convenience store. We just had the ice out of our refrigerator in there. Yeah, it's good times. All right.
I mean, I raised in the Bronx. We didn't have a lot of money, but when we went to Disney World, my parents were maxing out those credit cards, man. That was...
No, I remember going to theme parks as a kid, and I would get one thing, right? My first time at Disney World, I got a pair of sunglasses, like cheap ones. Cheap, crappy ones, but I got some. Or I got Worlds of Fun. I used to go to. I get one thing, the keychain with the photo from when you came in. You look at it. That was it, man. That was my budget. $10, $20.
All right, we've got some WIGS members have weighed in on the Reese's debate.
Oh no, what are we saying?
Jay Ware said the eggs are his favorite. Tom L said the regular. I'm with Eric on this.
Yeah.
But then Jay Ware also likes the scoops.
Oh no.
Jake said he's with Eric. I guess I don't know if that's a scoops or Reese's.
Scoops, Freestyle machines, or Reese's.
All 3.
Yeah.
Mark said scoops rock. Great for salsa dipping.
They taste like rocks.
Now I need I feel like this was written to say Reese's, and I hate when people say Reese's, but we won't get into this now. Someone said their favorite. Jake said their favorite is Cantina. I guess that's
the Cantina style chips. Yeah, they're like more delicate, right? They're more delicate, but they have that light texture. I really like those. Those are good, but they break off easily if you're in really chunky salsa. You gotta be careful. All right.
Yeah. Do you have the pirate bone myth?
No, I don't have it on here. Do you want to?
I'll talk about it because Mark just hinted at it. This is real, by the way.
I'm interested.
There was a myth that there were real skeletons on Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland.
Okay.
There were.
Human skeletons?
All of those skeletons at the beginning portion of the ride were real skeletons. And then Disney eventually, a couple years later, switched them out. This is documented. I don't remember if it's Imagineering story or Behind the Attraction. Or I've seen Disney in some video recently admitted to this. Was like, yeah, they did do that.
They probably got them from like a medical school or something.
They did, yeah, absolutely. They acquired them through, the proper means, which there's nothing wrong with.
Yeah, they didn't just go digging around Glendale.
No, and it wasn't frowned upon. It wasn't frowned upon at the time. But a couple years later, they're like, we should just manufacture some. Why don't we just make them ourselves? So that never happened at the other ones. It was only Disneyland when it opened, and it wasn't long. I think they said a couple of years. I don't know if the year is documented anywhere, but they were switched to fake skeletons eventually.
That's great, actually.
Isn't that cool?
I think when you think of like how they discourage people from putting the ashes of the remains of their loved ones into a haunted mansion, and they stop the ride and all that kind of stuff, to think that they just had human remains in a ride for years.
They were actually there, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of human remains and Pirates of the Caribbean,
The finger?
Walt.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the guy that lost the finger.
Okay, well, you can start with the guy with the finger.
This is pretty recent.
Yeah.
In the last decade, I forget when now. This is a myth just because it's never, like, there's no police
there's
record.
no, like,
there's nothing
record of it.
out there, but enough people that work at Pirates and elsewhere have talked about it. And it's very recent. I remember talking to people while this whole thing was going on. So, I mean, it feels very real. But apparently someone had their hand in the water going down the drop.
Not hard to believe.
Lost a bit of a finger or two on Pirates of the Caribbean a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They had a refurb a while ago where they changed some of the stuff on the boats and worked on the track and stuff. That was related to this. But in between, they couldn't figure out. They're like, how could he have possibly lost a piece of his finger? So they went to Casey's Corner and got hot dogs.
Come on.
They got hot dogs and they put them on sticks and they put them down the sides of the boat for the whole ride and saw what happened. And they couldn't get them to slice. They couldn't figure it out.
That is the problem with the Casey's hot dogs.
They're probably tougher than your hand. That's probably the issue.
Yeah.
But that enough people at Pirates, people we know that worked at Casey's, have talked about this, that I think it's real. I think they kept it quiet. The guy probably got a nice settlement, but then they were like, we need to figure out if this is a real problem. And we're like, we can't figure it out, but I guess we'll go do some work on the boats and the track and just make sure that we're not liable for another settlement.
I would have to see some more compelling evidence than a few anecdotes on that one.
I mean, that's like the E.T. one at Universal, right, where the kid lost most of the foot. They lost the toes. That was a couple years ago, and that was, I mean, they were closed for a couple days for the cleanup,
right.
And it's pretty, enough people have talked about it, right? There's nothing really, not a whole lot out there on it, but it definitely happened. The kid stuck the foot out, and yep.
All right. Yuck.
Ouch.
So probably the most, ouch.
Ouch.
I'll be right here.
You want one of these, a foot.
Boy. All right. So probably the most famous rumor ever is that Walt Disney's remains or parts of his remains were frozen cryogenically. And some of the rumors even went to suggest that for some reason they froze it and put it beneath Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, which just sounds stupid because what's the point of is there a freezer down there? That's an easy one to disprove, right? But that was, in popular culture, I think in later years it became that they froze his head. It's cryogenically frozen. Yeah. This did actually kind of happen with Ted Williams, the baseball player, right? Where his family fought over cryogenically frozen remains. The Walt Disney rumor is pretty easy to disprove. Not only did the family, including Diane Disney, said this is not true, his death certificate certifiis that he was cremated 2 years after his death, or 2 days after his death. Sorry.
And there is a grave in L.A. I've been there.
Yeah. His ashes are maybe in there. I don't know.
They're there, probably. Yeah.
I don't know. They did not scatter them in the Haunted Mansion either.
No.
So
no. I tend to think some of that was like confusion, right? Like there was the rumor. I don't know how public it was that he was building a new apartment for him and his family above Pirates, right? So I bet everyone was like, what are they building in there with Pirates? It's a big building. I don't know. Yeah. It had to be part of like they had never seen a ride the size of Pirates built before, and Walt had just passed away, and everyone probably was like, I don't know. And again, I think it was so believable at that time because, again, the company like had invented robots and done all these crazy things. It's like, yeah, of course they're on the leading edge. They'll freeze his head and someday he'll return, right?
Yeah, there are so many hyperbolic stories about Walt during his life. It only makes sense that they have them after his passing as well, right? Where this is just, and even the stories that have elements of truth to them are often exaggerated, unless you're a person who believes that literally every day he had the Sherman Brothers come to his office and play Feed the Birds, and then he would say that's what it's all about. Because there are people that believe that that's how he ended every single day at the office.
I do believe that man ate like chili every day, though.
And he smoked a few cigarettes, had a Scotch mist.
Yeah. I believe he was very set in his dietary regimen, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with doing the same thing every day, a little routine.
No, it was the 60s, too. Yeah. Nothing wrong with a couple packs of cigarettes in the 1960s.
I guess if we talk about this, too, is a rumor. So if you take in traditions, which thousands of you have, right, as cast members, the famous two-finger point. Disney cast members will point to something with two fingers. The reasons given make complete sense, which are, number one, it's easier to see that, right? Two, in some cultures, pointing with one finger is somehow considered rude or something like that. They set it on two fingers. It looks more professional, whatever. Then I find out that people are saying, oh, actually they were mimicking Walt because Walt used to point with two fingers. And then the reason he pointed with two fingers is they were cutting out of the photograph that he was holding a cigarette. So that the genesis of the two-finger point is Walt holding a cigarette. That's a long stretch. I think it's a hilarious story, but there's no way it's true.
I kind of believe it.
Really?
I think people just, he did some training and people were like, he points with two fingers. Maybe he was so used to smoking that he would do it even if the cigarette wasn't there, maybe. I don't know. But it could be a show thing, too.
Do you think he taught traditions?
No, but I think when they established what Disneyland would be, I'm sure he was very involved in, like, how will my people be different from the people that work the county fair or, the amusement pier or those things. I think that was very important to him.
Yeah.
Right? Because Lillian, like, when he talked about, I'm going to have a theme park, blah, blah, blah. And Lillian immediately was like, those places are dirty and terrible. What are you doing? And he's like, no.
Quiet, woman. Go over there.
It'll be clean. You'll be able to eat off the floor. And everyone will have the same haircut and the same clothes.
No one but me will have facial hair.
To clean them every day. I will be the only mustache in the park. No one, God. Oh, it'll be different.
But I think, like, there have been, related to things like smoking, there have been stories in the past. Like, I remember that there was an old legend of, like, a kid followed the princesses backstage and Snow White's smoking a heater and, like, buzz off, kid, I'm on my break, all this kind of stuff. I think there is a photo somewhere, though, of when they talked about the genesis of the utilidors at Disney World. There was a picture at Disneyland of, like, a guy in a night suit, a cast member, walking through Frontierland, busting out a dart.
Or the cowboy going across Main Street or et cetera,
Yeah,
there's
like
a bunch of those.
The mixing of theme and all that kind of stuff. So I get that. But
he hated it. Yeah. I totally believe that. He was that OCD. Yeah, for sure.
I believe that. I don't know.
And I love that. I mean, that's Walt Disney's OCD is the reason we have Disney, right? It's the reason that the quality is different and it is a special thing. And that's why people, every time we talk about things, and I do want to do an episode about nitpicking little things like that, right? Because I think it's fundamental to what Disney is. It's those little, the attention to detail, those little differences are the things that made Disney different from everybody else.
So there's like this mythology with Disney that I think is part of that quirkiness, right? They're just different enough that, like you said, you would believe almost anything that especially pre-internet.
All that was
you believe anything that
people.
anyone said.
Like, he's going to build an amusement park and it's going to have one entrance and you have to go back and forth in and there's no midway with games and no Ferris wheel. Like, no, that didn't make sense to people.
And there's so many connections to popular culture and to historically important moments and stuff that touch on Disney World. Look, this isn't on my list, and it's not really a myth. John Lennon signed the paperwork to end the Beatles at the Polynesian Resort. The only part of the myth that I've heard that is not true is that he was with Yoko Ono. He was not. He was with a different girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did. They did dissolve the Beatles at the Polynesian. It's become woven into popular culture.
Richard Nixon.
Right. Richard Nixon gave the I'm
not a crook at the Contemporary.
Yeah, at the America's Ballroom.
Yeah,
right.
I believe so.
Where Mickey's of Glendale, where I shopped at Mickey's of Glendale. So you can watch that speech, and very little has changed in that. The Ballroom of the Americas hasn't changed a whole lot since
it's
then.
like taking your money. We are crooks. Admit. That's the second best Richard Nixon Disney story.
Give us the best one while we're here.
The monorail one. They tell that one all the time. I think it's on the Behind the Attraction, right? Where they left without the Secret Service guys and they were like, oh no. And they rode the monorail around and then came back. The Secret Service guys were freaking out. It's pretty neat.
Okay, this one's going to generate a lot of arguments too. The myth or the position stated here, and this is again from tours, tour guides, people who are supposed to who are presented as people that know everything,
Yeah.
that the American flags on Main Street, USA, have only 45 stars because they're trying to circumvent the U.S. flag code. In other words, they wanted to leave them up all night long, and if they only had 45 stars, they don't count as an American flag, so they don't have to treat them with the same amount of respect.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell an alternate theory, which I think is true. Number one, the flags are lit at night. They're not like bright spotlight, but they're lighted, which is the U.S. flag code says that that's what's customary,
That's
right?
allowed, yeah.
If it's gonna be outdoors, the custom would be that it is lighted during evening hours, during darkness, right? My theory is this: there are 45 stars on those flags, not because Disney's trying to cheat the U.S. flag code, not because they can't have someone take down 6 or 8 flags at night and put them back up the next morning when the way they do a million other things in their routine, which would be easy for them to do, just walk across the rooftop and bang, bang, bang. My position is that Main Street, USA is set around the turn of the century, around 1900, sometime between 1890 and 1910, right?
Yeah.
And during that time period, there were 45 states in the union. Mm-hmm. So I think they're reflective set pieces of the time period they're set in, and they have the one big flagpole when you walk in town square that is a real bona fide American flag, which is the one that they do the flag retreat and raising of every single day. It makes a lot more sense to me that the Walt Disney Company, Walt Disney, who was a war veteran who saw himself as a patriot, would not be circumventing the U.S. flag code on some dumb technicality to get out of paying someone for an extra 10 minutes of work. Yeah. It makes a lot more sense to me that it's just reflective of the time period when we had 45 states in the union. Yeah. That's my own work on this. I think other people might agree as well. I think you could disagree. I mean, you paid $100 and something for your tour. You could believe whatever they told you, right? Yeah. Or you were a tour guide. That's what you were trained to tell people. Yeah. I think it's BS. You agree, disagree?
I don't have a strong stance on this one. I don't know. And I think enough Imagineers have argued it over the years. Like, no one seems to really have the answer.
Right.
So I don't know.
Andy's coming. That's true, by the way. Andy Morton, my brother, will be here next week. I'll actually be picking him up when this podcast airs on Tuesday. Andy's coming. The idea being that you could shout Andy's coming at the Toy Story characters when they're out in the parks, and they will immediately flop to the ground.
This isn't a myth. This is social media just ruining everything, right? So someone did it on social media and showed it, and then everyone went to do it, and then the character performers were annoyed because they were tired of falling on the ground 45 times a day.
There's also risk of injury.
So, yeah. No, I mean, those costumes, so much respect for those performers. Those costumes are not... Very few of them are comfortable or fun to be in, and those people always put on a great show for, the guests, right? Those cast members. So I think it's just out of necessity. They're like, don't do this anymore. Just stop.
Just stop. You can maybe tell Woody there's a snake in his boot. That works sometimes, but
what about sausage?
Oh yeah, your favorite sausage from
Roundup barbecue. It's the only thing edible at that restaurant.
Was it?
We gave that a pretty positive review. I went back and it was awful.
I thought the sides were good. Their brisket was terrible, and I read some other people just to sanity check on myself.
Oh, there's another.
And someone called it a grand slam. It was like the best brisket. I'm like, I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that's like, I'm from Kansas City, so I'm an authority on barbecue or whatever. But come on,
they're still
terrible.
Look, things in a theme park don't have to be the best of a certain food item you've ever had, right? It's still a theme park, right? They have to be good. They have to taste good, right? And we had scaly, bad, meat.
Yeah.
And I went back again. It was like that again. It was dry and scaly and gross. But then some of the other stuff we reviewed positively was bad that night. So I don't even know if I'm going to go back again. I'll go back at some point, I'm sure, but I'm not a fan of Roundup Rodeo at this point. It's a shame because I like the cocktails, but I'm not going to pay for a fixed menu for cocktails.
Here's a myth that's based on technicality, I think, which is nobody dies at Disney World. Technicality being here, that Disney would somehow prevent medical professionals from pronouncing someone dead on site. They would make them leave property before they could examine them to do this. And my understanding of the way the law works is, look, if I walk by Spaceship Earth and someone decapitates me with a lightsaber, that no one there is qualified to declare me dead or to pronounce me dead.
So
someone can arrive on site and
medical
somebody can declare me on dead on site, like, hey, that I'm a police officer. I declare that this person's dead. Come get him. Yeah. But somebody like a medical examiner, somebody at the hospital would pronounce me dead. My death certificate would reflect that. That's the same. Like, look, nobody dies at my house. Yeah. Because I don't have a medical examiner at my house to pronounce them dead. Also, nobody has. But, it's sort of a technicality. People would say that somehow Disney influenced it with their all sunshine all the time attitude that, oh, no, we must leave property before we can say that. It's just the way that pronouncing people dead works.
Yeah.
Right. If you know different, let me know.
No, that's pretty much.
I mean, let us know in the chat. Maybe there's a medical examiner watching who somehow finds this more exciting than declaring people dead, pronouncing people dead. All right, here's another one. A lot of people believe this one. Michael Eisner is the golfer in Soarin' over California.
He's not.
He's not. So it's a great scene. You fly over PGA West. That's in La Quinta. Beautiful golf course. Yeah. A lot of great golf courses near there, by the way, all you golf fans. If you Google map it, you can see that hole. It's really distinctive because it has like a canal running down the side with a green on one side of the canal and then the fairway right there. It's PGA West Stadium course. So a lot of people swore for years and years that that's Michael Eisner. And this came back into public consciousness because Soarin' over California was returned to EPCOT, and people were like, "Oh, good, I can see Michael Eisner again." My favorite Michael Eisner attraction. As far as I know, that is incorrect.
Destination D23, the archives team came up and was like, "We've researched. It's definitely not him."
I could tell by the golf swing because that golf swing looks like maybe not like a tour pro, but it looks like a very good golf swing. I could see that from the swing. I don't believe Michael Eisner's swing could be that good based on his history as a hardworking executive in the industry.
Yeah, LA, media executives never play golf.
No, they do. I just don't think they have time to refine a swing that's that athletic.
To go for a filming, however many takes they had to do that day. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah. The golf ball is fake, by the way.
Yeah, it had to be in order to get it right where.
Can you imagine? You have to wait until one whizzes right by the camera.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one that a lot of people will say is true. Because I've been told this, the presidential seal on the floor of the Hall of Presidents is one of like two or whatever. The only other one is allowed in the president's office, and that it was they made an exception due to an act of Congress that allowed them to display the presidential seal. Number one, it looks a lot like the presidential seal, but it's actually the Great Seal of the United States. It is not the presidential seal.
Yeah.
Secondly, there is no record of Congress ever approving any special exception for Disney. So this is almost assuredly untrue. You've been lied to again by a tour guide.
Yeah.
Okay. A two-parter here.
Okay.
The gist of this myth is, and we can swap this to Disney World, but the Disneyland Skyway closed because someone fell out and died.
Yeah.
There was no deaths associated with the Skyway at Disneyland. Even people who fell and hit their head and weren't moving, and then they were taken somewhere for a medical examiner to pronounce them dead. As far as you know, that never happened. What did happen, though, is a man jumped out. That man this is like in the 90s.
Yeah.
He landed in the trees and bushes near Alice in Wonderland attraction, sustained some injuries.
Yeah.
He did survive. And then he sued Disney. And in his lawsuit, he was seeking $25,000, which doesn't seem like a lot for them making you fall out of a
ride,
out of a sky, a gondola in the sky, right? So that's the first dubious part, right? $25,000. And then it turns out they were able to get him to admit that he jumped out.
Yeah.
Now, the idea was that this insurance settlement and the risk was why they would shut it down, though. Yeah. That because this ride is very risky, we just have to, no insurance company is going to like underwrite a policy for this ride because we're getting sued. Now, granted, I think they would easily settle for $25,000 without even getting the insurance company involved if that had been a true accident, but it wasn't. But the truth is, again, kind of look for the simpler answer. It was going to cost a lot of money to keep that thing going.
Yeah.
So,
and it was a ride that had, it didn't hold up, right? Like when it was built for Disneyland, there was a simpler time, and I think Disneyland had long since, past that point, right?
They used to go through the Matterhorn, though.
Yeah, they closed in '94. I mean, the next year they're going to open the Indiana Jones Adventure. We're going to keep operating. The Skyway didn't have show scenes. It didn't it wasn't. It was charming, but it wasn't storybook land, that level of charm, right? And it wasn't anything impressive. So I don't, I think if they were looking to make budgetary, cuts, it made sense.
So the reason apparently is that they just were detecting like some stress on the supports and things like that for that Skyway. It was going to cost a lot to fix up, and they're like, is this really important enough for us to make a large investment in it? And they literally did transfer like the operating budget for this ride to Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So Indiana Jones got that now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it uses it up on like day 3 of the year with all the breakdowns and problems.
How many people have to work in that giant building?
Someone was killed on a sailing ship Columbia at Disneyland.
Yeah. The wire, right? The rigging.
Yeah. It had to do with the rigging.
I don't even want to talk about it. It's very bad.
Now,
very bad.
At Magic Kingdom, there was unfortunately a death associated with the Skyway, which was a cast member who was cleaning it, and they didn't realize he was kind of out there on the platform. Somebody started the ride.
Yeah.
As he got pushed off, the cast member kind of grabbed onto. He was a little, like probably in his 60s.
Yeah.
He grabbed onto the bucket essentially, and then fell like down into a flower bed about 40 feet and unfortunately did pass away. Yeah. Again, that is not given as the reason that attraction closed. It's the same reason, right? Operating budget, the amount of cost versus the amount of benefit to the park and all that kind of stuff. But so that's kind of that one's kind of like a 50-50. Yes, someone did pass away at the Disney World Skyway, but it is not the reason that it closed. Okay, let's get to some Haunted Mansion myths, shall we?
Are we going to talk about the wedding ring, which is my least favorite thing that's like ever happened?
Let's start with the wedding ring. I can scroll down. I have it, but go ahead and tell the story.
You give the gist. You correct me if I'm wrong with any of the stuff.
No, I literally my bullet point says Haunted Mansion ring. So
So many, many years ago at the Haunted Mansion, I guess there was a stanchion that they removed. They took a pole out. And it wasn't one of those poles where there, I guess, was a circle in the ground where you just lift it out and you take it away. Or maybe it was the remaining circle from that thing. I don't even know which of the ones it is. But either way, a stanchion particle was left in the pavement. So there was a circular silver ring in the ground.
The disdain you have for this myth is hilarious.
Yeah. So cast members decided to start telling stories that it was the bride's wedding ring.
She got mad and threw it out of the attic. That's what I was...
That or whatever the story may be, whatever it is. But either way, it's the bride's wedding ring. This is pre-Constance, by the way. It's the bride's wedding ring, and they told the story, and they keep telling the story, and it's everyone talks about it. I remember even at a young age walking over it and being like, that's definitely a part of a stanchion.
Like WDI would do a better job of making a ring than this remnant of a stanchion.
It's too big. What, her finger, would she have Andre the Giant's hands?
The hands, yeah.
Andre the Giant, anybody want a peanut?
Anybody want a peanut?
You want to marry me? And so...
All white horses.
The ring he ripped off of Hulk Hogan leading up to WrestleMania 3. But anyway, so there's a silver ring in the ground. And so finally they're going to embark on they're going to do the interactive queue, that whole project, 2011, somewhere in that zone. And they redo the pavement and everything, and it opens. And I remember walking through, like, Jason Sorrell, who's now with Universal Creative, was given a tour. We went to some Parks Blog event where he's given a tour of the queue, and they point out the ring, and he tells the story. He's basically like, we got so tired of people telling this story that we decided to just make it a thing. And so they embedded an actual, what looks like a wedding ring in the pavement in the extended.
It doesn't look like a ride stanchion.
No, it's a ring. It's got the stones on top, and It's embedded in the pavement. So now I hate that it, like, they were just so mad about it. They like made it a real thing. That always bothered me because I hated that people started that rumor to begin with. But it eventually, it's a myth that became
true,
real. Right. Yeah, eventually.
That's actually kind of a trend, though, right? Things like that happen, where something gets something goes on long enough that someone makes it just.
Well, that's been the thing with Disney in more recent years, as the internet, as a fandom has evolved and grown and become more knowledgeable. You'll see a lot of things, especially in updates to older attractions, things like that. There are these homages to things that never happened or things that were urban legends, or right. So you think about, like, when they did that mansion project, that wasn't the only weird, fan thing they did, right? They put the one-eyed cat on the mausoleum when you hit it and you hear the cat meow. There was a lot of that lore. The sea captain, right? That the whole mansion was supposed to be
Klein
themed to the sea captain. They gave him a grave, right? All that kind of stuff. And we've seen that with Skipper Canteen and all sorts of Tropical Hideaway and all the sea stuff. There's a lot of lore and making myths real and making things that never saw the light of day part of the real lore, finally. Hatbox Ghost, that kind of stuff, right? Which was a Disney myth, right? Hatbox Ghost was a myth.
Right.
Because people are like, I swear there was this ghost where the head vanished and appeared in a hatbox. People are like, you're crazy, that was never there. And then finally, the age of the internet, people are like, we found the footage. Here he is. It's real. Like, obviously, there's always been that picture of, is it Claude? It's Claude with him.
Yeah.
But then people are like, we found the footage. Here it is. It existed. And then...
But he was never in the house.
He was.
He was?
Not here. Disneyland for a couple of weeks. And they pulled it because it didn't work.
I know at D23, their explanation for where the placement is going to be at the Magic Kingdom is kind of an eye roller. First of all, they're like, does he make it 1,000 ghosts, right? We're adding the Hatbox Ghost. Yeah. And they go, no, he's always been
He's unhappy.
Which has never been the case.
He's an unhappy
And he goes wherever and whenever he pleases, which explains them putting him in a place that doesn't make sense, right? Because there are two theories, I believe. There's two theories about why the Hatbox Ghost isn't going at the exit to the attic. One is they had a problem getting electrical there. I think the one that makes more sense is it's an evacuation route, right? That's like a ride evac route, and they can't block it.
Either way, the real story is, this is not a rumor, the real story is that it cost more to put him where he is at Disneyland. Okay. And the Magic Kingdom said, we have to
run electrical or
find another
change
spot.
A evac route,
they found, whatever the reasoning is, it cost more money, and they put it. And I thought it was really a shame that they made Daniel Joseph, who's a tremendous Imagineer, incredible guy, and the only reason the Hatbox Ghost exists again, which I think...
He did in his garage.
Yeah, he has the best story of anyone at Imagineering, right? Where he grew up idolizing Yale Gracie and those guys. And for him, I guess it's Yale Gracie in the picture with the Hatbox Ghost.
Who'd you say it was?
Claude.
Claude Coates.
Maybe it's Yale. I think it's Yale, actually. But like he idolized Yale Gracie, and so for him to be the guy that figured it out, to be the guy who, on his own time at home in his garage, built the Hatbox Ghost and then brought Tom Fitzgerald over and said and turned it on, and Tom goes, "We gotta show this. They gotta put this in." Yeah, and that to be like, for his legacy, a guy that grew up idolizing those special effects guys like Yale Gracie, and for him to be the guy who gets to put that back in as an homage to what his heroes did. That's the reason I get up in the morning, right? I love that stuff.
Yeah, for those that don't understand the criticism of the placement at the Magic Kingdom, essentially it goes something like this.
It ruins the story.
It ruins the story because if you pay attention, no ghosts are visible in Haunted Mansion until after the seance scene where Madame Leota calls them out. So now we have a ghost who precedes the seance. Yeah. So it breaks the continuity of this story. Yeah. That's the common criticism.
Yeah, and the apologists are like, there's a hand coming out of the casket. That's a body. That's like a zombie body, and it's just a hand, right? It's not a full apparition either way.
Is the zombie a ghost?
Yeah.
Does he not count? Is there also a zombie in Haunted Mansion?
I have no idea, but it's definitely like human bones. Either way, it's not a full reveal, right? The story builds until the point at which they all appear for the swinging wake in the ballroom.
Right.
The story's wrong. I don't care what you want to say about the Hatbox Ghost. There's no associated lore with him. He's not some mean-spirited creature. It's never been established. And they didn't mention the movie. Everyone will go, the movie. The movie does not apply to this attraction.
Different universe.
It is. It is. Because in that universe, there's 2 mansions. And they're different, right? The Florida mansion interior is not different, folks. Not that different.
One of them is the Hatbox. They go to the Hatbox Ghost mansion, whatever his name was.
Gracie, yeah.
No, the Hatbox Ghost is...
well, then they find out his name is something...
It's something... I forget his name.
Crump.
Crump, yeah.
That's right, for Raleigh, yeah.
Yeah. So...
it's a different house. It's not...
Alistair Crump, I think is his name. It's a different house. It more resembles the Florida Haunted Mansion, though.
Yeah.
But
which was my favorite part of the movie, the fact that they had the 2 houses. I love that. I thought that was great.
Should we stick with another Haunted Mansion myth?
Yeah.
Are we done?
No, go ahead. I'm sure there's 50.
There's a million of them, right? Obviously, like, everybody knows, like, people have for years tried to dispose of ashes of their loved ones, a little flask of them here and there or whatever in the Haunted Mansion. Allegedly, they say don't do it. It causes them to have to stop the ride and get out a dustbuster, and then your loved one goes into the dumpster or whatever. So that's not really a myth. That's how they discourage you from doing it. I don't know that this is a problem that they can easily detect, but I understand they do clean the place from time to time. All right, how about this? One of the singing bus is Walt Disney. Nope. That's
just a guy that kind of looked like him.
It's Thurl Ravenscroft.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't know who he is, a few things. I mean, he was involved with Haunted Mansion, Country Bear Jamboree, the Tiki Room, the Mark Twain Riverboat, Pirates of the Caribbean, Disneyland Railroad. But more famous, he sings "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," which people always thought that that's Boris Karloff, because Boris Karloff is a narrator for the Grinch. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, but it's actually Thurl Ravenscroft's voice. But more famously, he's Tony the Tiger.
They're great.
So, I mean, it's not Walt, but Tony the Tiger is not a bad consolation prize for that. Let me see. The Haunted Mansion ring. Okay. Here's one I don't know the answer to. The FSU on Splash Mountain. Allegedly, an FSU engineering student worked at WDI and inserted the name FSU and had one of the characters say it very high pitched when FSU, one of the things coming down from the ceiling. I don't know if that's true or not. I just thought of that one.
That's real.
That's real.
There is more to that I've tried to uncover because it's also in the Tokyo one. Mm-hmm. And some people say it wasn't there originally. It wasn't there in '92. That supposedly it was later.
There's another one that's a little more delicate, which I had always been told. The second version on Journey into Your Imagination, where the blocks lit up and it was a sped up, high pitched voice that said Mickey is a blank. If you listen to it slowed down, that was supposedly put there by a disgruntled person who found out they were losing their job. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard it and it kind of sounds like that.
I mean, that ride was terrible. So anyway, anything bad we want to say about Journey into Your Imagination is fine with me.
Yeah, I don't know if that one's true, but I know that has made the rounds. I don't know any way to prove or disprove something like that.
I mean, that ride only was open for 18 months or whatever it was. It didn't last long.
I think it might have been the original. I think it was
it wasn't in the original. No,
the blocks lighting up was the second one, right?
No, the blocks are in the original.
Yeah, maybe it was the original then.
I don't think that was real. That wouldn't have stayed there. I've never heard that one. That's new to me.
Okay, here's one that they've told people. My brother claims this was taught to them in traditions or an anecdote presented to them during traditions when he was in the college program many years ago. That a woman sued Disney claiming that a brick fell off of Cinderella Castle and hit her, and she had a brick painted gray or whatever to be see?
Yeah.
Here it is. And they're like...
There's no bricks in this.
She filed a lawsuit for injury, and they're like, hey, lady, this thing's made of fiberglass. Whatever. There's no evidence that this lawsuit was ever filed. I think it's just a commentary on how stupid
it seems believable.
People believe the general public is when it comes to things like that. So
Mark brought up, Mark, one of our WIGS members, brought up another Haunted Mansion one, which is, I know, real. Real scare actors in Haunted Mansion. Disneyland tried it for a little while. It was a thing. And I actually, I got to experience it. They brought it back for one night only for that 50th anniversary event at Disneyland in 2019.
Where were they?
The live night, the night.
Oh, just the night?
The night, yeah, would pop out.
That was it?
Yeah.
That's the only scare actor was the night?
I forget if there were other ones, but it was the night was the one that was the real one before, and so they reenacted it. Were there other editions? Did they have someone in the ballroom?
When did they stop doing it? I don't want to say what year
There's
I
a
first went to
story out there. I
Disneyland,
don't
but-
want to be wrong. You Google it, and there's stories out there about people who were involved in doing it. And it was like, we did it for a couple weeks, and this happened, and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to say something wrong. It's been a hot minute since I've read this story, but we do have video here on the channel of when it was resurrected for the 50th of Mansion.
The dumbest one, the Weather Dome.
This is my favorite. My favorite Disney World.
The myth goes that Disney is so smart and so wealthy that they created a massive dome over the parks.
Yeah.
Where either they can protect you from bad weather, or there's also a similar rumor that Disney has figured out ways using cloud seeding or whatever to control the weather around Disney World to make sure that your vacation is not ruined.
Yeah, this is my favorite.
Which is,
I think
where
this
do
is
you
a
start with this
combination,
one?
again, coming out of that pre-internet era, right, where Walt Disney went on TV and explained EPCOT, and I think people saw this big covered city, right? With these big domes, there's these big openings in the ceiling covered with glass domes, right? I think that's part of why people believed it, right? Again, like also Disney World built a whole city in Central Florida. I think it became believable for people, and I've heard people half jokingly talk about it to where I think the guests thought it might be kind of real. But one of my favorite Weather Dome memories was there was a particular 3rd of July at Magic Kingdom. We're waiting for fireworks for a couple hours, and real crazy lightning is happening. And I think I just yelled out, "Disney sure is putting on a show in the Weather Dome tonight."
It's like the
and
Truman
people
Show.
lost it because, and I think it speaks for. I didn't realize how many people like knew that myth.
Yeah.
But the fact that like I got a good laugh
Very
out of a
common.
whole crowd means everybody got the joke. So it's pretty well known.
I mean, if you are around enough, like, look, a number of your meals every week are at Disney restaurants, right? Or I go to Disney bars and restaurants and hang around. Inevitably, you're going to overhear someone say with great confidence something that's just made up.
So many things.
That's just made up. I know you overheard a guy recently. Like
The guy,
DVC
I'm going to base a character on him on News Tonight.
Yeah.
The DVC guy who, like, these two poor people, I think all the seating at Dahlia was full.
Yeah.
And these two poor older guests, I think he's like, "Can we sit with you?" Yeah, sure, blah, blah, blah. And he's going,
I'm a
on and
DVC
on.
member, so I know everything.
And my favorite thing was he's like, "Oh, I like the deluxe villas or the deluxe studios because they're better." And I'm like, they're all called deluxe studios. The word deluxe is just in all of them.
Right.
That's just a thing. That's a DVC terminology thing. They're not better than. I think the only one that's not are the Jumbo House ones are not called deluxe because they're like regular hotel room shape. I think, but still, to be like 40 different other rooms versus that one, and you're like, I like these better.
I like to get the deluxe burger down at Disney Springs.
But then once he had tested the waters enough, he broke into what my usual favorites are. And when someone's like, I got a friend who works in general contracting, they're building the 5th park, and it's going to be this, this, and this, and I've seen it, and blah blah blah. And I love that. I love that stuff, man. It's the best.
Everyone's an expert.
Yeah.
People ask me, I don't know. I don't pretend that I know stuff people don't know, usually. I certainly wouldn't say I got a friend that works in general contracting in there.
No, in my sources, I never tell anyone anything. No one knows anyone I knew. It's just like, nope. No, this person told me. Where do they work? I don't know. Can't tell you.
All right, so Jay Ware asks in our WIGS chat, he says, I want to know if Jim Hill's story about the closing of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is true. He said Michael Ovitz went to inspect it because he got so much fan mail about it, but WDW management sabotaged it by putting him in the worst vehicle, pouring water in the sub he was riding in, making it smoke and jerk, etc., so that Ovitz would cancel the ride. Cancel the rehab.
I probably believe that. But again, we'll never know. We'll never know. I've never heard that story from another person. But it seems plausible, right? It always leaked. It leaked on the break rooms and the utilidors, and it was a maintenance headache for sure. I just think the park, like at that point in Magic Kingdom history, that's when they started getting real cheap in that park. And so I think it was like, this costs a ton to operate. The hourly capacity's not great. No one knows this movie anymore. Let's just get rid of it. And then maybe someone came and looked into it and they're like, under no circumstances are we giving them a reason to make us open this ride again.
Right.
We are not paying to operate this thing. I could see that. I can't confirm it. I can't deny it, but I believe it.
I think there's room for an attraction. I don't want to say physical space, but like there's room in my heart for a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea attraction.
Do I have the park for you, Eric?
I don't. Yeah, I know the walk through it in Disneyland.
No.
Is that what we're talking about?
DisneySea.
DisneySea. So that one, yeah. Something like
Where
that.
it's not actually wet? Yeah.
Right. I think that makes sense because I think I still love not to overuse the word, but like the kinetic energy used to be like you would see the submarines going by and the Skyway buckets and people walking into Mr. Toad and all this stuff. The teacups are right there around the corner. You walk into Tomorrowland, you see the People Mover. There's the Skyway right there. There's all the Astro Orbiter. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and it makes you feel good and happy and excited to be there.
Yeah.
And to eliminate that is unfortunate. But I get why they did it. Right. Those things were if it's in your memory, you're like, man, that ride was the best. Go to Disneyland and ride the Nemo submarines. It's still kind of.
Let's be clear. What was the best about 20,000 Leagues? The subs were gorgeous.
They were amazing.
It was the real submarine, and they were going around the lagoon, and it was a beautiful venue, right?
Yeah.
The ride was not great. It needed some desperate help, and that's why when Atlantis was coming out, everyone's like, that makes sense, and then Atlantis tanked, and
I read another myth/not myth. I'm not sure of the source on this one. There was a woman who claimed, I think she had ridden Tower of Terror like hundreds of times, was riding it like more than 10 or 15 times a day.
No.
She had some sort of physical ailment, and the dropping sensation relieved that ailment. And a cast members started to recognize her, and they started feeling bad, and they started letting her get to the front of the line. Eventually, that got like canceled. They're like, no, you no longer get like permanent lightning lane on this. And she flipped out and I don't know if she filed a lawsuit or something, but I saw something that had her name, her age, where she was from, and all this kind of stuff. I don't know that gives it any more credibility than any other rumor, but that's another one of those rumors that you're like, really? You have an ailment that can only be relieved by riding the Tower of Terror.
Do you have the Big Thunder one?
No, you want
the Kidney Stone?
Tell me about the Big Thunder Kidney Stone.
Supposedly, Big Thunder Mountain will help you pass kidney stones.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think it is
a mine. They're looking for rocks.
Well, there are doctors that have said, yeah, in theory, yeah, absolutely should.
Just getting tossed around?
Yeah. Something particularly about Big Thunder. I don't know why it's Big Thunder, but something in particular about the movement of Big Thunder.
It is clinically proven to relieve kidney stones.
I will tell you, like, that's always been my idea since day one is if I ever get one, I'm just going to go ride Big Thunder a bunch, and we're going to prove it or disprove it.
Do you have any retinas left to detach?
No, the retina things. Well,
is it aren't your retinas stronger than ever? They made them bigger, faster, stronger. Like, aren't they less prone to? But
I detached one retina detached on Rock and Roller Coaster, another one Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind.
They should put you on like Templar of the Forbidden Eye as the big statue. You had a little laser shooting out of your. No.
All right. I just want to reference a Country Bears. Put me on a window or something. Someday someone will recognize my role in the history of the Country Bears.
Are there any Country Bears myths you can think of?
Myths?
Yeah.
Yeah, the myth that we lied. The
Write
myth
it down,
that we made up a Toy Story marionette show. And Bob Chapek threw a hissy fit, which is what happened.
That is interesting, right? Because it's one thing to say they're closing the Country Bears, but then to just come up with a Toy Story marionette show, that's a different level of psychosis.
Indicative of his management, man. That's where they were going.
No, I mean, if you're lying, if you're making up a story, that's what you come up with.
Yeah, what an idea. Like Toy Story Land just opened. Let me just pick what's got to be the dumbest idea. right? And it was, right? Like Moana Tiki Room, I get that. That makes sense. I don't want it, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Toy Story animatronic marionette show in Frontierland when you've just built a Toy Story land was pretty stupid.
So Jay Ware says the Nemo submarines are not the same. I'm not saying they're the same, but the ride experience is similar. You go into a cramped submarine, you flip a thing down from a wall, you put your nose
except for
against
the rubber squid. The mermaids, all that other stuff.
That experience is more fun in my memories than it is when you go do it, is what I guess.
20K at Magic Kingdom was not supremely themed to 20,000 Leagues, right? Other than Captain Nemo narrated,
here's some grouper
submarine looked like the Nautilus, and that you eventually encountered a squid.
Yeah, they're not markedly different. They are different. Yeah. They're distinct from one another, but they are not so different that riding one, you're like, no, you got to ride this other one.
No. I don't think that was ever anyone's like, oh my God, this is the best attraction in this park. I don't think that was it for anybody.
I think I loved that it existed more than I loved the actual experience of
the aesthetic, right? And Disney kind of realized that in more recent years. Now they're building a bar. They're like, the aesthetic of 20K is great. And even it's Trader Sam's involvement. They're like, the aesthetic of this is great. People like to have this. They're like, the Nautilus is an incredible design. Like people just want to hang out in this vibe. Right? And the great thing about DisneySea is it's like, oh, OLC's going to buy a park. And everyone just looked at each other and went, that's a big budget. We could just pitch them whatever we haven't been able to do, right? And so it's like Journeys to Center of the Earth was pitched for 40 different things, right? It was a scene on the backlot tour. It was its own ride. It was all these things. And then finally, like DisneySea gets brought up and they're like, OLC, would you like this? And then same in 29 Leagues. They're like, well, we had to close that in Florida. Maybe we could do a new version, right? Let OLC pay for it, and maybe someday, Florida or California, someone will be like, that's a really great ride. We should build that here too. It's a lot of that in DisneySea. A lot of that park is stuff that was put on the back burner or canceled, or things that they had to close in the U.S. parks that those guys were just like, yeah, let's do it. And we'll talk about that. Eddie Sato's going to come on, and we're going to talk about the 20s Main Street for Paris. Electric Railway and the American Waterfront absolutely ripped from Eddie's designs, right? That park was just a bunch of things that either, it was all the stuff they didn't get to do.
Eddie Sato, man. He's amazing.
All the stuff they didn't get to do in other places they got to do at DisneySea. And 20,000 Leagues, a new 20,000 Leagues ride was one of those things.
Mark Pyle says... The myth he presents is the Rolling Stones were the first choice over Aerosmith for the Rock and Roller Coaster.
I don't believe that one.
No.
But, next time we talk to Jim Schull, who was heavily involved in that project, we can ask.
We can ask Jim. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about it at Stage 89.
I mean, there's obviously been rumors since of Queen or whatever that didn't shake out.
Yeah.
So you never know what
there's supposedly Rolling Stones and I forget what the other one was. They were supposedly the two bands they asked first. The other one's less obvious. I'll think of it eventually. Go ahead.
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot else. We've run out of myths, Tom.
Is that all of them?
But some of these things that sound crazy are true, and some of the things that sound true are crazy.
Yeah.
And you never really know until you look into it. We've tried to do that a little bit. I'll give you an example. Eric's story time, Sea Tales from the Marine Corps. So, in the 1990s, I got sent to Liberia. This is a very long story, but I'll try to truncate it as much as I could. By the way, I was part of a group that got sent to relieve another group of people. Rob Riggle was in the Liberian embassy the same time as I was, but I don't know if he was part of my group that was relieving the people who were already there or what. Liberia was the first Liberian Civil War. So the main character for me, the one you want to just, people there they have beliefs that a lot of people in a Western culture wouldn't understand, right? Yeah. They had a guy, the first person I saw was like painted completely white and wearing like just a pair of shorts and like high tops. And he's in a war. He's like fighting. And he goes, he's telling the interpreter like, I'm painted white because I'm invisible. And he's like, but I'm talking to you, like I see you. And he goes, no, I'm only visible to my enemies. If you can see me, that means you're not my enemy. And they told us before we went in, hey, don't be surprised you're going to see a guy wearing high heels, a football helmet, and a life jacket, and carrying an AK-47. You never know. People have strange beliefs. There's a guy, and I used to tell stories about this guy. Nobody ever believed me. This is like pre-Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
His name was General Butt Naked. Not the same. There is a character in Book of Mormon named General Butt Naked.
Yeah,
Different.
You're omitting a word, but yeah.
Yeah, but this guy didn't have that extra word that they had in Book of Mormon. General Butt Naked. And he is a member of this tribe. There was these warring groups. There was a civil war. There's the NPFL, and there's these guys, the Krons. So the NPFL, picture like guys in Land Cruisers with young people smoking crack, carrying AK-47s around and bossing people around and looting the place. And then the Krons, a little bit more primitive. They did have weaponry, but they would often, not all of them were armed, and they would fight it out near the embassy within like our sight and earshot. And when basically the Krons, a bunch of them didn't have guns. So they'd dance around and motivate the guys in the front fighting while they were fighting out with the other guys. By the way, none of these people actually like aimed. This is kind of how they fought, right? Just shoot wherever. And they would dance behind and motivate them. And then when those guys ran out of ammunition, then the guys in the back would all chase them down with machetes and chase them. So this is the type of conflict we're in. General Butt Naked was the head of these kind of Kron fighters, and he would stand out there not wearing clothing with an AK-47 in one hand and like a white T-shirt tied around his head and like maybe a cartridge belt, and he'd just dance. And they couldn't hit him because nobody aimed their guns. So he thought, they all believed his story that there was black magic. Basically, the president of Liberia brought him in at one point in his life to protect the like presidential palace from black magic. So I tell the lesson is I told this story a dozen times to people. And like a couple years ago, a friend that I hadn't talked to in years texted me from out of the blue. He's like, I always thought you were full of crap. I always thought you were just like entertaining us with your BS stories about General Butt Naked. He's like, and then I went down a rabbit hole and I know everything about the guy now, and everything you said kind of checks out. Yeah. Terrible stories about this guy, right? The ones I'm telling you are pretty fun by comparison. If you look, there's some awful stuff, but every now and then you find truth in the unbelievable fictional stories, and that's Eric's sea tale of this episode of the podcast. So.
I think in the realm of Disney, there are a lot of buried secrets.
Yeah.
Projects and things that maybe were going to happen that didn't, right? And I think that's always going to be fascinating as a fan, right? And that's why I'm always fascinated by unbuilt projects and things like that. Right. I think some of these other myths like weather domes and stuff are, it's
ridiculous.
It's interesting, but it's nonsense. But yeah, I've been told the other band was U2.
Okay.
There's Rolling Stones and U2 were the first two bands they asked.
Instead, U2 is the first one in that sphere in Vegas, right? Or maybe they weren't, but they're
supposed to be the sphere.
Making their rounds on social media last week. It's amazing. So.
Yeah. Myth, the Tower of the Four Winds was chopped up and thrown in the ocean. Not the ocean, it's the Hudson River, bro. The World's Fair, Raleigh designed the Tower of the Four Winds because they had the Pepsi UNICEF building was ugly for Small World, and they didn't have a lot of time. So Walt was like, Raleigh, just do something for the outside. He built this big, colorful, spinning thing that it's Tower of the Four Winds, and it blew in the wind, and it was cute and amazing. And no one wanted to ship it anywhere. Like he didn't want it for Disneyland, and Pepsi didn't want it, and so it was like most of the fair. It was destroyed and probably either A, put in a landfill, or B, thrown in the Hudson River. Like that's the story of the New York World's Fair. I mean, a lot didn't survive.
My New York geography is not great, but wouldn't it be easier to throw it in the East River? Wouldn't it have to transport it all the way across the East River?
Yeah, I guess
through Manhattan to throw it into Hudson River.
That's true.
Hudson River rolls off the tongue a little better.
But maybe like they trucked it to the landfill and were like, this is too big. Just we don't want it. It's not going to break down. It was steel, right? It was a steel structure. They're like, just throw it in.
Didn't they bury most or all of the Horizons ride vehicles somewhere near Epcot?
That's a different era, right? Yeah. And also, like, this wasn't if you were a fair, operator, contractor, whatever. If you left it there, that was a whole different team that dealt with taking all that stuff down.
Yeah,
that wasn't Disney dealing with that. That was whoever was tasked, whoever got the contract to tear down the New York World's Fair, right? So, wherever it went, and I said probably a landfill. I think people like to say Hudson River because that's the one in New York everyone talks about when like, oh, there's bodies in there, and the mob threw stuff in there, and they threw stuff in there.
It's closer to New Jersey.
Yeah, it's more interesting.
It has that
than
grimy
the
mystique.
East River, maybe, yeah. But you're probably right. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense. It makes more sense that they like chopped it into 5 pieces and then just rolled it down the street. You know.
Who knows?
But who knows? But either way, I believe it's either in a landfill or in the bottom of the river. It's one of the two. If no one has it, then that's where it has to be.
Right.
It was too big for anyone to take. One thing you learn in the collecting of Disney parks memorabilia, the bigger it is, the less likely it's going to go anywhere. The less likely it's going to survive, right? The bigger stuff, people pay less for it because they don't have places to display it. And if people don't have places to display it, it's even the Walt Disney Archives, where they go on and on about how much they save from the parks. It all becomes very budgetary, and it's like that's too big, and we don't want to fly that back to LA and blah 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 blah. There was a whole argument, and I know people at the archives got mad that I told this story before. I don't really care. So when they were building Walt Disney Studios in Paris, there was very little money to build that park. The park had to be built as part of the agreement. They would lose the land if they didn't open a second park by 2002. Right. So they opened a second park, but there's very little in it. So it was basically like, can we just get stuff sent here? And they decided to build the backlot tour because it was a cheap option. Right. But they're like, we're not actually going to have like real facilities here, not that much. So what are we going to do? What are we going to put along this route? And it was like, send whatever you got. And WDI sent the stupid floating vehicle from Horizons, right? There's one of those. It's still in Backlot Express at Studios. Another one was on the Backlot Tour. It was still there the first time I went to Paris, like 5 years ago. And then when they were closing Backlot Tour, the archives had some discussions where it was like, well, what are we going to do with this stuff? And there's some good stuff that didn't survive, right? So the Aladar animatronic that was on the Discovery riverboats,
Aladar,
without skin, existed on the Backlot tram tour in Paris for a hot minute.
I'm not sure I like him.
Then he vanished. It was the one that was outside, not the one that's in the dinosaur ride. It was the one that you would see along the Discovery riverboats, which was a short-lived attraction at Animal Kingdom in the beginning. But there was an argument where the archive said, like, we're not paying to take the Horizons ship. It's fine. And it's just like, well, I guess it's just going to be destroyed. Okay, no one cared enough to spend the money. A multi-billion-dollar corporation, and everyone pointed fingers who was going to take the Horizon ship until in the end it was like, well, just destroy it.
Hey, Jay Ware makes a good point. Look what look what Disney, anyway, let happen to Walt's plane.
Yeah.
It just sat there in a state of decay for decades.
There was no plan. And then eventually, thanks to Amazon, someone was like, oh, yeah, we'll take care of that. Sure, yeah. But yeah, no, they let it sit. No one.
That's how Walt's plane got a smile on the side of it.
Yeah, again, they all pointed fingers, right? Yeah. They all pointed fingers. The archives, WDI, property control, everyone pointed fingers at each other and was like, it's your response. No, it's yours. It's your response. And then in the end, everyone just went, it's no one's. We left it in a field, and then eventually people are like, oh, it may not be in great shape now. Oh.
Is that how they talked?
Well, I like to talk as if they're stupid. They're not stupid. They're just cheap. Everyone's just cheap, not stupid necessarily. Right, and like look at Spectrum Magic, right? When they left that outside in the sun.
It's literally the next thing in the chat.
They left it in the sun, and it was destroyed. Yeah. And then they went back a couple months later, like, oh, oops. There's a reason you have parade warehouses. It's because these things are not meant to be left outside. Yeah. No kidding. If you leave Spectro out, it's not going to make it. And maybe that was someone's intent. Who knows? But either way.
Meanwhile, the Main Street Electrical Parade stuff still exists.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they've fixed it up, had to fix it here or there, but replace stuff. But
yeah.
I mean, the fact that parade is intact and Spectrum Magic is disintegrated.
But look at what the archives has, right? Like Maelstrom. They took the smallest things. It was like, we'll take the baby polar bear and then the other polar bear. And it's like, that's it. Why? Because the other stuff's too big.
The troll.
Sorry. Yeah, and it's just like, forget the rest. Oh, well. It was like, oh, we'll take stuff that we could just check it on the flight back to Burbank. And that should never, when you're talking about the history.
A lot of work getting that stuff taken out of there.
The history of your company, the decision should not come down to we don't want to crate something and ship it, right? It's either important to your legacy or it's not, right? And that's why a majority of the great movie rides sitting in trailers behind property control. It's all the stuff no one wanted. No one knows what to do with it. These aren't myths. These are real. This is the real truth of the situation. Who remembers one of my favorite things? Circle of Life closed at EPCOT, the film in the land. And they began the process on Awesome Planet, and in the meantime, there were the Timon and Pumbaa signs on the wall, right? The like 10 feet, 50 feet, blah, blah, blah. Maybe actually it might have just been no, because the marquee had to come down. It was I believe it was one of the sidewall ones. We posted about it. And it was an argument between the park and WDI as to whose responsibility was to pay to remove the sign from the wall. To take a sign off a wall was a months-long argument.
I mean, did this not happen with Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom? They're like, hey, yeah, you're in charge of this. They're like, good, we turned it off. They're like, what about the monitors and all the screens? Nope, not our responsibility. Well, it's not ours. Well, whose is it? I don't know.
Because no one wants it in their budget. No one wants it on their sheet at the end of the fiscal year, right? Mm-hmm. No one wants to take that loss.
I spoke to someone one time, and it's a person who is in management of maintenance. They would write, the maintenance manuals for all the rides and stuff. And the big debate was this is before the Skyliner opened.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for the maintenance of the Skyliner? Yeah. And they were fighting internally. They're like, that's transportation. No, that's
attractions.
Yeah, attraction. No, that's
the park
WDI or that whoever. Yeah. They would argue about who was responsible for that. Yeah. Nobody wants that hot potato, right? That's going to inevitably cut into their budget.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting a little off track on myths. These are not myths.
Well, here's sort of a myth that ties in the Br'er Bear tale.
Oh, the Br'er Bear. We end on the Br'er Bear tale.
Because I have an update to this because I recently spoke to someone who worked in maintenance at Splash Mountain. And so I know a little more of the story that's kind of interesting. So for those unaware, I came across a photo many, many years ago, I think before the website even existed, that my father took on Splash Mountain, I think opening year. And it has Br'er Bear, and he's caught up in the trap. He's roped.
Yeah.
And he has his tail under him. It's very visible. And I remember riding the ride the next trip. I rode the ride. And I'm like, the tail's not there. Where is the tail? It's missing. And my cousin and I would joke about it for years. And then finally, when we got to the point where many years ago, we did what was called a maintenance report.
Right.
Where we went on Disney World.
They really liked that.
Lists of all the things that were broken. And it was a retaliatory thing we did against Bob Chapek. And it worked very well. But also because we cared and because we knew we could do it.
Was that the start of Chapek hating WDW?
No, this was retaliatory at this point. It was already ongoing. And I decided this was the best way to teach him a lesson. And it was. But anyway, we started this maintenance list, and it got printed out, and it ended up in all these offices, and they would go down to the maintenance guys and show them the lists. And some people in different maintenance departments would email me and message me and be like, hey, we can't actually fix that because of this. We can't do this. This is why this is like this. But within 5 or 6 days of the first maintenance report, and the tail was on.
The bear tail the tail was off for years, over a decade, right?
The tail was not visible. And so we rode someone said it was back. We rode the ride, and there's a video on this channel. You could watch it with me. Usually I try to remain quiet when we film something. I don't react to the things happening in the ride videos. But for the Splash Mountain one, obviously, like, I'm holding the camera, and the tail, which is clearly my fault that it's there, I lost it because I had a direct effect. Like, as you grow up loving this thing, and you never imagine in a million years you will have any effect on it in any way, even if it's something small and stupid. And that for me was this moment where it was like, we have a very real effect on this place, and that's pretty magical. The fact that we can, affect change, right? And the tail miraculously appeared. So the maintenance guys told me that the tail was never gone. Whenever it was reattached in a refurb, I guess probably in the late 90s sometime, it was way up the back. You couldn't see it. It was there. Someone attached it way too high. So it wasn't visible anymore. So to everyone riding, he just didn't have a tail. It was in the wrong spot. And so when they went to do it, they're like, all right, I don't see and they walked around the back and they're like, oh my God, there it is. And so they took it
was like
off.
Velcroed on there.
I don't think it was that easy. I think someone had to do some sewing.
Yeah.
But they took it off and they put it back. Because I had the reference photo in the story from when my father rode the ride in '92. And they looked at the photo and they put it back where it was supposed to be. That's his story. That's from one person that worked maintenance at Splash Mountain formerly. Could be a myth, right?
Could be a myth.
I'm taking someone's word.
Like so many of these things.
But the fact that it was brought up to me, I tend to believe it. I don't think there's a good reason to bring up, right? It doesn't diminish the accomplishment of the maintenance report, right? It still made someone go do something. So I think it's a nice little fun fact that it was there. Someone put it there, but they put it in the wrong spot and no one could tell it was there.
And with that, I think
it took 4 episodes to tell that story.
I think we did it. We did our 4th episode. We've done 4 of these. That's a month.
It's very astute, Harry.
Most people said that we would fail immediately.
You mean
Yet
Jason?
We haven't failed yet. We might fail when this gets released.
Yeah, maybe.
But I want to thank you for all your insight and knowledge.
Thank you, Eric,
as we talk
for
about
all
Disney
your work.
myths. If you have a favorite Disney myth that you'd like to share with everyone, please let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
We love to see all the comments. Obviously, the comments
We read them all.
Yeah, we do. We do read them all. Remember the people that said that I looked like I had a drug problem because I was scratching my nose?
Yeah.
Hey, they were right.
And there were several people
absolutely
who
right.
said, I wish you guys were kind of facing each other more, and here it is. We did it, right?
Yeah. So we sometimes listen. But yeah, put the comments in there. Please like and subscribe.
Yes.
You know, maybe one of these days we'll do the thing where if you're subscribed and if you like it, we'll give you something.
We'll
you have a drawing or something.
Sure.
I don't know what our budget right now is $0 for this show. So we have to prove ourselves.
That's not true. We had to buy these waffle lights.
Yeah, the
There's
shirts,
new lights in here.
the suits could still cancel our show.
Oh.
Did we have suit? No,
You're the suits.
suits.
I'm the suit.
You're the suits.
You are
We're
the match.
I'm the second suit. Third suit. I'm the third suit.
Third suit from the
Third banana. Me.
from the right.
Yeah, but we could still get canceled, I think. I sense it. So
Wow. The only way to stop us from getting canceled is to support the show maybe by becoming a WIGS member.
that's true. You can become a WIGS member by going to patreon.com/WDWNT
Yeah.
or WDWNT.com/Patreon or click the Patreon link. Either way, WIGS obviously get early access to this show. In this case, we are doing it live for them on a private link. And they get early access to events. They get discounts on things. The WIGS have their own Discord community that is borderline unmoderated. It's the Wild West there. So if you
Don't
like,
say that.
maybe we'll start
What
cracking
have
down
you
on
done?
a kid. Sorry, though. Don't do that if you join. Be nice in Discord. But we have a lot of WIGS members, a great community to be involved in, and it's people that love the thing you love. So I think that's important to be associated with that. And you can do it for as little as $2 a month. Obviously, the $7 numbers where you start getting some of the perks that others don't get, which would be the post shows for WDW News Tonight and Park Center.
Early access to this.
Early access to this. Early access to purchase tickets to come to our events when we have them.
Yeah.
And some discounts and
Because
things
our
like that.
events, because we do them here now, it's very limited in-person space, right? We have room for essentially between 75 and 100 people in that room. And so when we have these events with these former Imagineers and entertainers and all of this stuff, if you don't want to be left out at home, not coming to the event, I mean, it's important to be a WIGS member. Several of our events have sold out just to WIGS members. So
Right.
it happens.
And if you're a WIGS member watching, we hope you enjoy the live stream of this. This will be edited, kind of chopped up a little bit.
Everyone really seemed to like
condensed
it
maybe.
watching
So please go watch it when it's on YouTube. Help us out. We gotta boost that.
Give it another
algorithm.
watch. Maybe you missed
something
Eric
involving
scratching his
algorithms.
nose or
Yeah, I
something.
didn't scratch my nose as much. I'm a little bit like I got my hair cut. I'm a little cleaner. I looked a little grubby the last one. So it is what it is. I don't want my mom to. My mom won't. Not that my mom would ever know I do this or watch it. I don't want her to see it and think that I didn't raise him like that. No. My mom, one of the most revolutionary moms in history, one of the top 20 marvels in mom technology history. I don't know how this works. Sorry, I couldn't let it go. Watch episode 3 if you're confused. With that, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on the WDW News Today podcast every Tuesday.
See you real soon.